Good morning all. I am very glad to welcome you all and start the fifth event of this webinar series in dialogue with the Regional Forum for Research and Innovation. After 1 month already, we are approaching fast the end of this journey, which has been conceived to introduce the 10 international members of the Forum, which is the Lombardy Region Advisory Board for the responsible governance of research and innovation, and to present to the Lombardy society at large. And I know that in particular today we have attendees well beyond the borders of Lombardy to present Forum's activities in these last 3 years. As I said, we are very close to the end with our fifth event after a very rich list of interesting topics in the broader realm of science, innovation, and society relationship. Especially for those who are not so familiar with the Forum was established thanks to a regional law, the Regional Law Lombardy is Research and Innovation, in 2016, and its role is to support the regional government in the responsible governance of research and innovation at local level. To achieve this objective, 10 members have been selected thanks to an international open call. And at the end of this selection process, 10 experts in responsible research and innovation, social innovation, data ethics, data governance, technology assessment and public engagement, science, technology and innovation policies have been appointed. And because of this richness of competencies and experiences, in the past webinars, we have explored first methods and approaches to engage citizens in co-designing public policies in research and innovation, as well as ways to involve citizens in the processes of research and innovation, together with Marzia Mazzonetto and Agnes Allansdottir. We have also known more about the importance of the usage of big data for better public policies, but we have also dived into big data limits and some relevant emerging issues, perhaps not already taken deeply into account, like the impact of big data on the massive energy consumption and their effect on the environmental sustainability, thanks to Federica Lucivero and Francesco Lescaie. We have then learned how a missing gender balance in research and innovation can have also an economic cost for our societies. And we have discovered what institutions and governments across the world are doing to close this gap with a webinar of Denise Didio and Guido Romeo. And just 1 week ago, David Gaston has introduced the US-based initiative called Public Interest Technology to better keep future technologies and policymakers to design, produce, and regulate just technological innovations. Today, we will go across one of the most mentioned keywords nowadays in science, technology, and innovation policies, the missions. The missions are definitely gaining momentum in the European context. This is one of the big novelty of the current framework program to support research and innovation at European level. But we also have missions in our national realm. In the grounding of the Next Generation EU in Italy plan, we have also missions. Missions have been proposed as specific societal challenges with a more articulated and measurable objectives, as well as clearly defined time horizon. Missions promise to shape the research and innovation landscape towards addressing grand challenges. In this webinar, our 2 speakers of today, Douglas Robinson and Ralf Lindner, will provide you an introduction to mission-oriented policies and also practices, describe some requirements for mobilizing mission as a policy approach and offer some practical consideration and food for thought, especially for regional policymakers and research and innovation stakeholders. Just a brief introduction before leaving the floor to our two speakers, a brief introduction of the profiles of the two speakers of today. Douglas Robinson is Deputy Director of LISIS, the Laboratory for Interdisciplinary Studies of Science, Innovation and Society. Since 2017, Douglas Robinson has been a senior researcher at CNRS in France and a honorary senior research associate at the Institute of Innovation for Public Purpose at University College London, working with Professor Mariana Mazzucato on mission-oriented innovation policies and its implementation. Originally trained as physicist and space scientist, Douglas has been both researcher and consultant, focusing on the emergence of breakthrough technologies and their transformation into working technology in society. A large part of his work is connecting academic research with real-world problems through engagement exercises, operationalizing responsible research and innovation, multi-stakeholder technology assessment, and the development of policy-relevant intelligence, also producing reports for the OECD and the European Space Agency and the NASA. Ralf Lindner is head of the Department Policy and Society and coordinator for technology assessment and governance at the Fraunhofer Institute for Systems and Innovation Research. He has participated in managed and coordinated numerous large national and European research projects in the field of science, technology, and innovation policy and governance. He is particularly interested in policy design and governance approaches for transformative changes, mission-oriented innovation policy, responsible research and innovation, and processes of policy learning. Ralf Lindner received his degree in political science and economics from the University of Augsburg, completed graduate work at the University of British Columbia in Vancouver, and postgraduate studies at Carleton University in Ottawa. From 2011 to 2013, Ralf Lindner held a chair in political science at Quadriga University Berlin, where he also was head of the Department of Politics and Public Affairs. So good morning, Douglas Robinson and Ralf Lindner. Welcome, and now the stage is yours.
Great.
Angela.
Thank you, Angela.
So I'll upload slides. Because I'll be clicking through the slides on behalf of Ralf and myself, I will not see your faces. I apologize. But please scream out if you need me to stop. So thank you, everybody. So our talk today is mission-oriented innovation policy, approach requirements and practical considerations. So Ralf and I will make a tag team through this presentation. This is the first time we've presented together and integrated our thoughts. We have a lot of synergies and complementary experiences which we'd like to share with you. Of course, what we'll do today is a tip of the iceberg. We'll give a kind of review of certain elements and await your questions. So a little bit about us. Ralf, would you care to introduce yourself a little bit more about your experiences with missions?
Yes, thank you very much. And also thanks for having us here. It's great to have the opportunity to present our thoughts on missions and discuss particularly these issues with you guys. Thank you also, Angela, for facilitating this event. Extremely helpful. Just brief words why we are talking about missions today and what we are basically bringing to the table. At Fraunhofer ISI, I've been focusing at least for the last 10 years, I would say, on issues of directionality in research and innovation policy. This is something that kind of emerged over the last few years, which is all about trying to reorganize research and innovation systems in such a way that they are better capable of addressing pressing societal needs. And mission orientation, of course, is part of this bigger picture. And in more concrete terms, we are at the Institute are currently conducting scientific support activity on behalf of the German Federal Ministry for Research and Education, which is all about looking into the German high-tech strategy. And the German high-tech strategy is kind of the umbrella strategy of the federal government on research and innovation. And the current version of this strategy defined 12 different missions. And we are tasked with this project on looking on how the implementation is actually progressing, and also tasked with the challenge, I would say, to develop a concept for measuring the impact of these missions. I'll leave it there and hand over back to Doug.
Yes, so I'm here for a number of reasons. I've been working with mission-oriented policy from two directions. One, with Marianne Mazzucato, we started our journey together in working on the space sector. So we were tasked by NASA to think about how to build a new space economy, an innovation ecosystem up there in orbit, which connected very well with regions within the United States of America and globally. And so NASA tasked us to come up with some big thinking, and we worked together on mission-oriented policies or strategies for NASA for building such an economic zone. And the European Space Agency liked this idea and asked us to repeat this idea, Mariana and myself, for the European Space Agency and the European Union. And there the focus was a little bit different. It was focusing on all sorts of things like navigation and telecoms, but also new types of space technologies. How can we build a mission-oriented research and innovation ecosystem that mobilizes space, but for the benefits of society and some concrete and specific goals? And so that was one angle I come to mission-oriented thinking. And Mariana and I continue this kind of endeavor in the space sector, thinking about missions and how it can be used. Another aspect links to my background in technology assessment and foresight. We are working in France, where I'm based, with a number of agencies to build capacities to think about missions and incorporate into both funding programs and research activities themselves. How do you build capacities? I will explain a little bit in a few of the slides that I will present today, and perhaps if you have questions, we can go a little bit further. So I'll leave it there and hand over to Ralf. There you go.
Okay, great. Thank you, Doug. Yeah, just to kind of provide you with some orientation on what we will be talking about in the next, I would say, 30 minutes. The introductions are already made. In the first step, we will given our account of the understandings of mission orientation or mission-oriented innovation policy. Also, the terms are quite diverse that are being used out there. But this is kind of the first step to kind of present kind of the common understandings that we are observing on this issue. And the next step, based on kind of this background of what actually constitutes a mission, we will present our thoughts on what actually does this imply for policymaking. Now, if you're a policymaker and you want to actually embark on such a mission, what are actually the implications of that for policymaking, and what are the conditions you should keep in mind? And then at the end, we want to kind of sum up with some of the key takeaways we think might be useful, and present a couple of thoughts, food for thought. All right, thank you, Doug. Yes, and Angela already mentioned a couple of key points on the mission-oriented policy issues. What we indeed observe, and that's what Angela rightly said, is that mission orientation has become really a key element in many countries of the OECD world. We see it not only in the countries that are present here with Doug in France and myself in Germany, but we see it in the UK, in the Netherlands, in Japan, and many other countries around the world. Despite this successful development of mission policy at this strategic level, we do have to take into account that the concept and its implementation is really still in the making. So it's still a very new concept in many ways, and we see still very different understandings that are being applied to the concept, and also different ways in which mission orientation manifests itself in actual policies in different countries. So this is just to keep in mind. There's no a firm understanding set in stone. Things are still in motion and developing quite dynamically, I would say. Maybe it is also important to keep in mind that on the one hand, it is quite obvious that missions are quite promising because they provide a chance to effectively address pressing societal problems, and I actually believe also particularly at the regional level. We'll talk about that a little bit more in the course of our presentation. So this is the one side, kind of the chances that are associated with mission orientation. But at the same time, we should be quite aware that implementing mission orientation is actually quite demanding, and requires a couple of changes in the way policies are actually developed and made, but also in the processes of implementing these policies. All right, so then I guess I can hand over back to Doug.
Okay, so the second part of our presentation is understanding mission-oriented innovation policy. So, I mean, you've all seen these, the kind of move towards integrating sustainable development goals and all sorts of sub-elements of the sustainable development goals into research and innovation policy and other policies around the world. This is, I mean, these are from 2015, they echo a kind of transformation of inclusion of these grand challenges over the last decade. And while we're here, it's kind of taken up in various ways across the world. And one element, especially in the European landscape, is to translate these sustainable development goals, which are very broad and very general, into more specific societal challenges. And so we're in the age of missions. This is a book a colleague of mine, Cayetano, has written with Mariana, but I'm going to use it as a free advertisement of this excellent book, but also I'll use this heading, the age of missions. We're in the age of missions, whether you like it or not. It's high on the policy agenda. So what does it mean? What is the age of missions? Well, missions are more than broad principles. They privilege impacts, specific impacts that are desired. They have a clear goal and they mobilize many different actors. We'll come to that in a moment. They're the translation of grand challenges like the Sustainable Development Goals into doable problems. So the idea is to be more specific, to create perhaps we could call them specific societal challenges that can be tackled and targeted. It's a key role for mission-oriented policy. So in the past, missions aren't new. There were missions before. Missions were often related to a well-defined outcome, such as putting a man on the moon, which mostly entailed technological challenges, and something I forgot to mention in the slide, often governed by a centralized actor. But modern missions, such as those addressing climate change, are more complex because there are fewer clear technological challenges and the outcomes are less clearly defined. So missions have to manage this uncertainty, but still try to achieve. So before moving on, I want to reflect a little bit on the integration of two elements in the Horizon Europe program. I mentioned it before. Missions are high on the agenda, but also ecosystems are high on the agenda. So I'd like to take a little sideline to look at ecosystems first and then move into missions. And you'll see the reason why we do this later on in the presentation. So Horizon Europe. So Horizon Europe is, well, it says the next, it's there now. It's the European Commission Framework Programme for Research and Innovation, close to 90 billion euros on this programme, so very large programme indeed. And this came, part of the pathway to this Horizon Europe programme was a reflection on the key findings from the last framework programme, Horizon 2020. And Horizon 2020 had an interim evaluation to explore what are the achievements so far and what are the lessons we can already learn to shape the next framework programme, Horizon Europe. And in particular, I'll start here. Strengthening international cooperation, reinforcing openness, rationalizing the funding landscape. These were elements that came up as trends for research and innovation policy and funding. And the key novelties for Horizon Europe that were envisaged then were extended association possibilities, open science policy, most importantly for our presentation, new approach to partnerships. So let's take Carlos Moedas. 2015, he gave a presentation which echoed some of these things in the interim report and drove the pathway towards Horizon Europe. Of course, it's not just Carlos Moedas, but he is a clear spokesperson for the Horizon Europe programme. So let's take this one. So he said, we are entering a world of open, user-driven innovation, a world in which the digital and the physical converge. A world in which knowledge is created through global collaborations involving thousands of people from around the world and from all walks of life. And then all over the world, through the involvement of a wide range of publics, innovation is increasingly presented as a participatory process to which everyone can and should contribute. So this is brought into the very fabric of the Horizon Europe programme. And the general idea that was brought up at these early stages was a notion called Open Innovation 2.0 and the quadruple helix idea. The quadruple helix was brought in the Horizon 2020 programme. And let me explain what those are. So Open Innovation 2.0. So while Open Innovation, CESPRA, etc., focuses on the firm as a central actor and how to create value through opening up to other actors, Open Innovation 2.0 takes the quadruple helix, so government, society, academic research, business, and the different types of connections between those four helices. And the perspective of Open Innovation 2.0 is that useful knowledge and invention can be located in the different corners of that quadruple helix and as the outcome of collaborations between them. So the Open Innovation 2.0 as a policy aim requires experimenting with and understanding a diverse range of collaborative partnerships. So let's come back to the missions. So missions were envisaged as an idea in 2016. Mariana Mazzucato, my colleague from UCL, she was quite vociferous and quite visible and still is visible around notions of mission-oriented research and innovation, policies, how to implement them. These are just two of the reports from a number of working groups that worked on the idea of mission-oriented research funding programs. And that general idea, which is translated into Horizon Europe today, translates, as I mentioned before, the Sustainable Development Goals as grand challenges to identify missions, and underneath these clear targeted missions, identify portfolio projects which are targeted at contributing, and this is a key word, contributing, not achieving on their own the mission aim. Come back to that a little bit later. So we have 5 mission areas that are guiding Horizon Europe. Many of you probably know all of these already. I remind you of them. So soil, health, and food. These are mission areas. These are broader than missions themselves. Remember, missions have the idea of being concrete, specific challenges. And the Horizon Europe programme has developed mission areas which within them would define concrete missions. So soil, health, and food is one broad area in which missions are being designed. Cancer, another one. Adaptation to climate change and including societal transformation is another. Climate neutral and smart cities, and healthy oceans, seas, coastal and inland waters. So many of these mission areas have very strongly linked to some of the priority areas for the region of Lombardy, as we've discovered in our time in the forum. So why did I take this distraction? Well, missions are not in a vacuum. They're connected to other policy approaches and ideas. And in Horizon Europe, we see, and the work that I do with Mariana and also in France, connect these two elements. This connection between the quadruple helix or innovation ecosystems, if you will, with mission areas. So this connection is important for regions like Lombardy, connecting mission thinking with regional ecosystems. And the region has an advantage on this, and we will discuss that later. So back to discussing missions and what they are. Already one can identify a broad range and diversity of missions. So Ralf, I'll hand over to you, and you tell me when you want me to speak.
Great, thanks for that, Doug. Yeah, Doug already alluded to the fact that indeed there's a broad range of the diversity to be observed out there in terms of different missions. And now in our current project, in which we are tasked with the objective to develop a concept to measure the impact of mission policies, we started actually to try to get some order into this diversity, and started to develop a typology of different missions that we can empirically observe. And this chart here shows you kind of our fourfold typology. The four types are mapped on basically two main dimensions. We have on the one side, we can differentiate between missions that are mainly focusing on scientific or technological progress, or we see missions that have a bit of a broader ambition and actually trying to tackle things such as systemic change, wants to transform institutions and systems, socio-technical systems, and also include issues of trying to support behavioral change. So this is the one side, basically the goal orientation side of the missions, and on the other side, we do see significant differences in the different missions we are observing in terms of the demands for governance. So depending on the type of mission, we see quite significant differences in terms of what does this mean to organize, to implement, to steer, and to govern these missions. We started with basically the two main differences. We have the types of accelerator missions, which are mainly trying to speed up the development of a certain scientific or technological solution. And we have the transformer missions, which are more geared towards trying to achieve transformative change in different application areas. And in each of these broad categories are display each two subtypes, because we even within the accelerator and the transformer types, we do see different approaches. For instance, if you look at the accelerator types, we have some of the missions are really quite narrow in terms of focusing on a certain technological or scientific breakthrough. And in terms of governance, this is still demanding, but compared to the others, it is not as complicated because you do not have involved so many different actor types. Then you have accelerator type 2 missions, which are much more about actually diffusion, bringing a certain technological solution into the markets, into application. And this already increases the demands for governance, because in many cases you experience, you have to look at application areas that cut across different fields. And things become a bit more complicated already, of course, with the transformer type missions. Here we are looking at transformations of certain socio-technical systems. Think of certain parts of the mobility system. And here already the coordination challenge becomes quite severe, because this is not only about issues of supporting certain tech and scientific breakthroughs, but it's also about issues of regulating the access to these solutions and providing certain market frameworks in order for the things to work. Just I think the details are not decisive here for the purposes of our presentation here, but the important message is, I think, to keep in mind there are quite different ways to look at missions, and depending on what mission goal you have in mind, the mission itself will look quite differently. And we think for policymakers or someone thinking about how should I design a mission, this typology might be useful, because it poses a couple of questions at the very beginning of such a process. What type of problem actually do you want to address with your mission policy? Is it more about market failure? Is it more a structural issue you want to tackle? Is it a systemic thing you want to work on? Another important question: what type of solution is needed to tackle these problems? Is it more technological, more scientific? Is it more something that requires regulatory actions? Is it about changing complete socio-technical systems? And depending on your answers to these questions, the way you will set up a mission will differ. All right, Doug. We can look at this one here. This is basically just to sum up the great job Doug already did in explaining what are missions actually, and what characteristics do missions have. Just to repeat that, because we think it is important, because it does show a difference to, let me put it this way, to science, technology, innovation policy making without mission orientation. First is of course this that the missions need to be ambitious and clearly formulated. So we need clear goals addressing a certain problem. These goals should not just be stated, but they should be quantified and measurable. And decisions need to be made about within which time frame these goals are to be achieved. So wishy-washy timelines like, in a decade from now, XYZ will be achieved, that does not constitute a mission. Then missions are usually cross-cutting in scope, where that means they reach beyond the established silos of governmental departments, and this makes things, no doubt, a bit more complicated than if you remain within the realm of your usual remit. And the focus of ambitious missions also reaches clearly beyond the realm of science, technology, and innovation policy, and includes certain sectoral activities and has to keep in mind certain regulatory activities, for instance, as well. Yeah, I'll leave it there, and we can move to the next slide, Doug. So I guess, you know, the issue of trying to understand what actually constitutes a mission and what are the characteristics of missions leads us to the next question. So what does all this mean for actually setting up a mission-oriented policy? And in order to make things a bit less complicated and maybe to deal with the complexity of mission orientation, we identified basically three main translation steps that seem to be important to set up successful mission oriented policy. The first step here we see is, of course, first about the actual formulation of the mission, the decision about which societal challenge are we actually tackling here. And it's also a decision about scope. So how narrow or how broad will such a mission be? And this first step, I would argue, is one of the most crucial ones in any mission policy, because if things do not turn out well here, it's very difficult to catch up with the mistakes that have been done in early phases of such a mission policy. The next step is about the mission design, and here it is very important to look at the actual instruments you want to include in your mission policy. This is not trivial at all, because as Doug already said, mission orientation does not start in a vacuum, because in actually every policy area we're looking at, there are already activities in place. There are already instruments being applied, and you have to take these things into account and think about what is part of my mission. Are there maybe some gaps in my range of instruments that are already being implemented, and how do these instruments relate to each other? So this is quite an important task to think about these things. And as in the first step, in the second step, the same is true. We need to involve the relevant stakeholders in these processes, because they carry both the information about what is the suitable mix of instruments, but they also are very important to provide us with the adequate understanding of the problems at hand. So the third step then again is actually rolling out all these decisions in terms of the mission design, and so the mission implementation is another important step, and it also includes all those things that I would call kind of the ongoing monitoring of these activities, just to be sure, where are we with our mission? Are we moving in the right direction? So this is also a very important element in the third translation step. Okay. Then, yes, in the course of preparing this presentation, Doug and I were thinking about, well, how can we kind of boil down the key implications that mission orientation might have for policymakers and policy making, and we came up with these 4 key challenges we see in this area. It's about strategy, it's about coordination, about ensuring reflexivity, and also thinking about what can we do in order to increase the legitimacy of these policies. And yes, I think I can now hand over back to Doug.